What's up guys, Saf here on Super Saf TV and we've got them in the house, the iPhone 14 Pro and the iPhone 14 Pro Max. If you're interested in the regular iPhone 14, I've covered that in a separate video which has also gone live. I'll link that video down in the description. Now, these have some big updates, so let's go ahead, get these unboxed, see what they have to offer. So the unboxing experience is identical for both devices. We do have a picture of the front of the smartphones on the box, and inside we are immediately presented with the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max, which we'll put to the side for just a second. There's also a little pack with a SIM card tool, some paperwork and an Apple sticker, and finally a USB Type-C to Lightning cable. Now, no surprises here that there is no charger included out of the box. You will have to use one that you already have or get one separately. And let's go ahead and remove the paper screen protectors, not plastic. And here we are guys, the new iPhone 14 Pros. So we've got the space black color here for the Pro, and for the Pro Max we've got this deep purple. These are the new colors. We've also got the silver and gold. Now this deep black is darker compared to the space gray, and I really do like it, especially the stainless steel frame. It's a full-on black with this matte finish on the back, which we also have on this deep purple, which I think is going to be the most popular. Now, generally, in terms of the design from the back anyway, these are quite similar to the iPhone 13 Pros. We've got the camera rings, although the camera module is now larger. Matte glass on the back, glossy stainless steel frames, IP68 water and dust resistant rating. However, when we go to the front, this is where we have the big updates. So we still have ceramic shield, but you'll notice that instead of the notch that we've had for quite a few years now since the iPhone 10, we now have this pill-shaped cutout, which Apple is calling the dynamic island. So this is basically a cutout for the front-facing camera and all of the sensors. Now, we've seen some punch-out cameras before on many of the devices for the front-facing camera, and we've also seen some pill-shaped cutouts on other devices, but those have generally been on the left or the right. We've not seen a pill-shaped cutout bang in the center, and Apple is fully owning this punch out by calling it the dynamic island. You'll also notice that we have a lighter wallpaper to really make it stand out. Now, if you do bring in the iPhone 13 Pro Max for a comparison, you'll notice that Apple is using much darker wallpapers to almost hide that notch and make it fade away. And if we put a lighter wallpaper on the 13 Pro Max, you'll really see the difference between the notch and the dynamic island. We've also got slightly smaller borders on the 14 Pro Max in comparison to last year, although you probably only notice this if you do look at them side by side. Right, now let's talk a little bit about this dynamic island. So Apple has added lots of software features to utilize that area, rather than what others have done and just had that as a simple cutout for the front-facing camera. So the dynamic island is going to display notifications, and it's also compatible with lots of different apps. So if you get a notification, maybe you're receiving something via AirDrop, then the dynamic island is going to dynamically expand and show you this information. If you're listening to music, for example, you can just swipe up and then you'll have an animation displaying on the dynamic island. You can tap the dynamic island to switch back into your music app. You can force touch the dynamic island to have a preview pop-up where you can control your music. And while that's happening, you can open up a stopwatch, for instance, and then also swipe up, and then that's gonna appear as a separate bubble, which you can also force touch and expand. Right, now what are my thoughts about the dynamic island? Well, I really like the fact that Apple has owned that punch out and really made it their own with all of the animations and the software. In terms of usability and the day-to-day, I do like it for the preview. I'm gonna have to see how it is to reach over all the way at the top, because when I'm holding my phone, then I am gonna have to use my other hand to reach all the way to the dynamic island if I do want to interact with it. And also my other concern is the fact that we do have the front-facing camera within the dynamic island. And while I'm touching the dynamic island, no doubt I am going to be touching the front-facing camera and putting fingerprints on it. So I will have to wipe it down a lot more just to make sure that selfies are clear. Right, so that's the dynamic island, but the display improvements don't stop there. We now have a peak brightness of up to 2000 nits outdoors, which makes these the brightest displays on any smartphone right now. And as well as that, we do have ProMotion technology, which means that we have up to 120 Hertz, making everything very, very smooth. The iPhone 14 Pros have LTPO displays with an adaptive refresh rate, and they can go all the way down to just 1 Hertz. Now that means a couple of things. Firstly, when you do have static content like this, the displays are not going to have to use too much power to refresh 60 times. But as well as that, for the first time, we have always on displays on iPhones. This is something that I've been asking for forever, so I'm so happy that we now have always on displays. And as we have with the punch out for the dynamic island, Apple has really made the always on display their own as well. We've seen always on displays for years on other devices, so Apple is definitely playing catch up, but I do like the way they've implemented the always on displays on the iPhone 14 Pros. So if you're listening to some music, the always on display is still going to display the album art. You can also add widgets to the always on display and customize these. Now, not many always on displays out there allow you that much ability to customize. But on top of that, if you do have a colored wallpaper on your lock screen, this is still going to be displayed on the always on in color, just dimmed out. Now, I think that's really cool, especially the addition of widgets for your always on display and being able to customize that. Now let's move on to the cameras, and I'm super excited about the iPhone 14 Pro cameras because we've got some big improvements. Starting with the front-facing true depth camera. This is now 12 megapixels, we've got a wider aperture, and we have autofocus for the first time from a front-facing camera on an iPhone. This is going to mean that you'll be able to take selfies right up close or from a distance as well. And unlike previous iPhones where the focus is fixed, you're going to get much sharper results. And the wider aperture and the new sensor will also mean that you're going to get better low light selfies. So those are the front-facing cameras, but we've also got some significant improvements for the rear-facing cameras. So the primary camera is now 48 megapixels and it's a 65% larger size sensor compared to the 13 Pros. Now we haven't seen a resolution increase on iPhone cameras for many years, so it's nice to see this very large size sensor with the high resolution. Now generally you still will be shooting at 12 megapixels, and that's because the camera uses quad pixel technology, which is basically pixel binning. It's going to combine 4 pixels into one to give you improved low light. However, if you do want to shoot at the full 48 megapixels, you can do that with Apple Pro RAW, which is going to give you some very detailed images. And we also have a brand new sensor for the ultra-wide camera, which is almost twice the size as what we've had previously. This still does have autofocus, which means that you're going to be able to focus right up close and get amazing macro shots. And then we've got the telephoto camera, which is going to give you 3 times optical zoom. Now, as far as I can see, in terms of the hardware, this hasn't changed much. However, you can get 2 times optical zoom as well, and that's thanks to the new primary sensor. What it's essentially going to do is it's going to crop into the main sensor, get the middle part of it, and give you the equivalent of 2 times optical zoom. And you'll also be able to take portraits now at 2 times as well as 3 times. Portrait mode has also had an improvement, and you're going to be able to get foreground blur as well as background blur, so this should give you much more realistic portraits. And Apple is now using what they're calling a photonic engine, which is going to process images in the raw stage to give you much better results, especially in low light. So you've got a 2 times low light improvement for the primary camera as well as the telephoto and the selfie camera. And you've got up to a 3 times low light improvement for the ultra wide camera. Do you want to remind them of the camera? I'll do it. Okay. I'll do it. Okay, fair enough. Guys, as Saisaf has said, I am working on a super safe style camera comparison of the iPhone 14 Pro Max versus the competition. If you want to see that first, you know what to do, guys. Make sure you subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss it. We now also have a 2 times brighter flash. I generally don't use flash when taking images, but I'm of course going to be testing this out. We've also got big improvements for video. 4K 60 frames a second HDR with Dolby Vision, which we were expecting, but now we have 4K up to 30 frames a second for cinematic video. Cinematic video is where it's going to artificially blur the background to give you more of a cinema look. I was pessimistic about this initially, I'll be honest with you, but I have actually been using it more and more on my iPhone 13 Pro Max, and I can only expect to use it even more on the iPhone 14 Pro Max now that it supports 4K. And Apple now also has a new action mode, which is going to stabilize your footage, especially very shaky footage if you're running or something like that. Now this is going to be down to 2.8K, not 4K, but it looks very impressive and I cannot wait to test this out. Right, now what's powering the iPhone 14 Pros? Well, we do have the brand new A16 Bionic chip, which has been improved in terms of performance compared to the A14, and we have big improvements in terms of efficiency as well. Now my iPhone 13 Pro Max still handles whatever I throw at it, so I'm confident that the iPhone 14 Pros will still be at the top of the game. And with the efficiency improvements, we should still be getting great battery life, despite having things like the always-on display, which will of course demand more battery. For charging, these do support 20 watts of wired charging with a charger that you'll have to get separately, but with that you can get up to 50% in around 30 minutes. And we of course do have support for MagSafe, so you can get up to 15 watts of charging using MagSafe, and around 7.5 watts of charging using a regular Qi wireless charger. And in terms of other features, we do have stereo speakers. Of course, we've got one speaker in the earpiece and one button firing. Face ID is still here and all of the sensors are here within the dynamic island. And you may have noticed from the Apple keynote that certain areas will not be having a SIM card tray. Here in the UK, we still do get a SIM card tray, but in the US, it is going to be eSIM only. Now, Apple has also added some new sensors to the iPhone 14 Pros. So we do have crash detection now. If you are involved in a crash, then the iPhones will be able to notice this and they'll be able to contact emergency services if you do not respond. A very useful feature which I'm hoping that I'll never have to test. And we also have emergency SOS via satellite. This is where if you don't have any reception or network, you'll still be able to contact emergency services using satellite technology. Now this is coming in November to the US and Canada. I'm not sure when it's going to be coming to the UK, and it's going to be included for 2 years with the purchase of a new iPhone 14 Pro or Pro Max. I'm assuming after that there will be some form of subscription model. Now finally, storage and pricing. These are available in a 128, 256, 512 gigabyte or a 1 terabyte option as well if you really want that storage. And the good news is for the Americans that are watching this, you will be paying the same starting price as you did for the iPhone 13 Pro and Pro Max. So that's $1,000 for the iPhone 14 Pro and $1,100 for the iPhone 14 Pro Max. However, in the UK, there has been a price increase, unfortunately. The iPhone 14 Pro will be starting at £1,100 and the iPhone 14 Pro Max will be starting at £1,200. If you do want to go for the 1 terabyte option, that goes all the way up to £1,750. Now, I'm not sure why this is. I'm assuming with the whole Brexit and inflation situation here in the UK, Apple has to increase prices. But that is the iPhone 14 Pro as well as the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Personally speaking, I'm super excited to try these out, especially with all of the new changes with the dynamic island and all of the camera improvements. What do you guys think? Which one of these will you be picking up? If you will be, do drop me a comment below and let me know. Let me know what other coverage you'd like me to do with the iPhone 14 Pros, because trust me, there's gonna be a lot coming up on here. If you don't want to miss any of that, then be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon, and that way you'll be notified as soon as that content is live. If you're interested in the regular iPhone 14, I have covered that in a separate video, which you can check out here in the card. There will also be a related video here. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, then do smash that like button for me. Thanks for watching. This is Saf on Super Saf TV. I'll see you next time.